Hi, Conf. How are you doing?
Good.
Everyone, yeah? I know you're doing good, Jeff. You're always doing good. But everyone awake? Yeah? No, food coma not quite hitting yet? I can just start talking really, gently, really softly, and just sort of lull you all into a kind of hypnotic state where we just say, bye, NXCloud, over and over. We'll just do that for the next 15 minutes, yeah? Jeff would probably like that, actually. So yeah, I'm Johanna Pearce. I'm one of the members of the NXCloud team. A lot of our UI has changed since the last time we took a tour through the clouds. So in this quick talk, I'm going to take a run through our latest look and show you where we're currently at least as of the beginning of last week. I'm going to try and cover all the bits and pieces. And with that, let's start at the very beginning with login. This is possibly not the most exciting of starts. However, I'm going to add my email address with my custom enterprise domain in here. We're going to get redirected to Okta, because for our on-premise enterprise customers, we've supported SAML integration for a while now. But we now also support this for our publicly hosted enterprise clients with either Okta or Azure. So after logging in, and this is right under my nose, isn't it? I'll try not to breathe through my nose. OK. After logging in, let's set up everything we'll need. And the first thing we need is an organization. I'm so sorry. Right, we've already got one which we could modify, but let's start from scratch and create a new one. I'm going to call this one Hanako. We can see there's a slightly curious name. Well, maybe you can't, actually. But there's a slightly curious name suggestion provided, which might be appropriate if I was developing software for fat rodents. There's some help up here which tells us a bit about member management. We can either be an admin or a member when we add it to an organization. The only other thing to set up is whether this is a public or private organization. Hanako isn't an open source software company, so let's go with private. And where does this video end? I can't remember. I've recorded all my UI interactions, a bit like James, and sometimes I can't quite remember where they end. There, OK. Right. The organization is simply a container for workspaces, and we'll need one of those for each repository that we want to connect to NXCloud. So we can run the suggested command to connect a new workspace, or in my case, I can grab the access token from a workspace that I've already connected to NXCloud but haven't taken ownership of. So after successfully taking ownership of the workspace in my new organization, we get to visit the dashboard for that brand new workspace. Woo! Yeah, as you can see, it's a bit Spartan at the moment. We don't have any runs, there's no recent CI pipeline executions, so our average execution time is under a second, which would be great. Never going to happen again. There's no version control integration, and there's even no local runs in this workspace at the moment. So while we could absolutely get working on this repository in NXCloud, would start logging analytics about runs and CI behavior, there's a few more things we could set up. In the workspace settings pages, we can rename this workspace if we want, or delete it and start again. But I'm quite happy with my Testy McTesterson workspace. So let's move on to manage our access tokens. Right, by default, we connect a workspace to NXCloud with a read-write token labeled simply dev. Now, which might be a clue. With this token and access to your repository, anyone can push cache artifacts to the distributed cache. And predicting hash values, even with the code, would be tricky, to say the least. But the probability of success is non-zero. So for open source software organizations and anyone else who's particularly concerned with the vanishingly small possibility of cache poisoning, we often recommend that you replace the token in your NXJSON with a read-only one. And for CI, where you'll often get the most benefit of the distributed cache, you can create a separate read-write token which can be provided via an environment variable in whatever CI pipeline provider you happen to be using. So here you can see that I'm creating these two new tokens, and then I'm way ahead of the video. And then I go back. Oh, come on. I've literally got a little note in my notes just to slow down. I'm paying no attention to it, obviously. Yeah, so I've created the two new tokens. And then we just delete that temporary dev token. Not forgetting, of course, do not forget this bit, to copy that read-only token into the repository itself and commit that. Right. So next thing we might want to set up is version control integration. Now, we currently support Bitbucket, GitHub, and GitLab. And when integrated with any of these providers, Nxcloud will be able to post a report on each of your pull requests, giving an update on which tasks are currently running, what's already succeeded, and perhaps more importantly, what has failed. My workspace, Testimix Testin, is on GitHub, but I don't want to install the GitHub application because, yeah, for reasons. We actually recommend you use the GitHub application, to be honest. But instead, I'm going to use a personal access token. So I'm going to skip over that very useful looking call to action there. Completely ignore it. I need to provide the URL to my repository. So let's just go and grab that, which you can't see. I just tabbed away. Anyway, there we go. And finally, the personal access token itself, which this one was really slow, wasn't it? We could also, if we were using GitHub Enterprise, override the default GitHub URL and point to Nxcloud to a different instance. But in this case, I'm just going to go with the default, which, when we get there, eventually, yeah. I took my time when I was recording this one, obviously. Yeah, OK, now we're connected. And now we can see in the top right here, there's this integrator showing green. Woohoo! It's the simple things. OK, now we're integrated with a version control and CI provider. We want to make sure that members of our organization can actually access Nxcloud to view run details and analytics. So let's go back and look at the settings for our HANA-Co organization. We can modify the name, visibility. We don't need to do that right now. We need to manage the organization members. So let's invite a new member. I'm going to invite my colleague Raresh, and I'm going to specify that he has to use an external identity provider rather than creating an Auth0 account. If he does just create a default Auth0 account, it won't be connected to this organization automatically. Now, this is fine if we only have a few members that we want to invite. So for free organizations, that's what you get. If, however, we want to allow access to a larger group of people, we can't do that easily on the free plan. We'll need to upgrade the organization. So let's go and do that. We've got 2 pro plan possibilities. There's also enterprise, but that would take a little bit longer, and probably a few conversations. There's the standard pro plan and the cheaper pro plan for startups. Now, HANA-Co is definitely a pretty new company, having only existed for about 10 minutes now. So let's go with the cheaper plan. All we have to do is just read the details here, confirm that, yes, we're definitely a young company, we definitely qualify, tick the box to acknowledge the terms and conditions, and start your trial. We don't need to enter the billing information right now, so we'll just dismiss that. We'll do that later. I don't have a credit card on me either. Anyway, so, right. And now we have our free trial period. This one ends on the 1st of November, which feels quite generous. Well, I would say that. Now let's go back to member management, and we can see a new option, which is the allowed email domains. For this particular organization, I want everyone with an nx.dev email address to have access. So let's just add that as an allowed domain. And it's that easy. With that, we've set up our organization as best we can, and we just need to start using it to see any data. So I'm not going to go through setting up distributed task execution or do any live CI runs here, because that would be really painful. So let's just assume I've done all that, and we'll move on to looking at a slightly more mature organization, the NX workspace. Woo! Which actually doesn't look like this anymore, but anyway. You can see we've got version control integration enabled, we've got distributed caching being used, and distributed task execution is implemented in CI. Each of those little indicator lights that you saw is also linked through to the relevant documentation on that topic if you need to know a bit more. So we can see all the latest runs. We can filter by failures, successes. This is great. I am not going to look at the branch screen because we've got rid of it. But I'll show you that later. It's being replaced with something that, yeah, I'm going to show a sneak preview of later, but Victor and Simon have actually already shown it. So we can see time save charts here over the last 7 days, the last 30 days. You can see that the NX workspace saves a considerable amount of time, over a year of compute time each month. And this is probably an underestimate, since we were running with a read-only token in CI for a number of weeks recently. That was unintentional, but anyway. We can download this data in CSV format, as you might have just seen, should you wish to perform your own analysis on it. Now, the real MVP for Nxcloud, at least currently, is distributed task execution. So we have a slightly updated visualization for this. For this particular run group, you can see we're distributing the E2E tasks among a number of agents. If we pay attention to agent 8 on the right there, you can see there's a warning indicator that tells us that it hasn't completed any tasks in the last 15 minutes. It gives us a little bit of advice on what might cause that and how to solve it. Now, further down, we can see our waterfall chart of completed tasks, giving us an overview of how long things have taken. Below that, we can see the summaries of each of the runs within this group, including any in-progress runs. So let's go and take a look at one of the in-progress runs now. In-progress runs will always have this caveat at the top as they're constructed from unfinished data. But otherwise, you can look through them as the same as you would any other run. You can see the tasks that are finished and their status. In this particular case, things are looking good. Everything's succeeded so far. On a completed run detail screen, you can see some of the same information, but now we also have a link to the commit hash that generated this run. We also show information about the environment run in, what type of access token was used. In this case, we used a read-write token, so this should have generated cache artifacts that future runs can utilize. Lastly, let's take a look at some, well, it's actually not lastly, I've got another section after this, but anyway, let's take a look at some typical troubleshooting paths, how NXCloud can help make sense of things. Take this draft PR into the NX repository, for example. If we scroll down here, you can see the report that NXCloud generates when you add the version control integration that we looked at earlier. You can see we've successfully completed 5 tasks already, and there's a failed task highlighted above them, because we don't really care about the successful tasks. So let's just link through to that failed task and see what it is. Now here we can see all the tasks in this failed run with the failures first. From here, we can dig into that. We can look at the terminal output, figure out what went wrong without having to slog through reams of unrelated CI terminal output. Now, a common occurrence is that folks see cache misses when they don't expect them. Debugging those can be time-consuming. So here we see a successful run, all the tasks are successes, which is great, but it took quite a long time, possibly because all the tasks were cache misses. Now let's open up one of these tasks, and here we see this button labeled Compare to Similar Tasks. And if we click this, we go to our task comparison tool. We might have the link for a previous run, which we think should have run a similar task and created an artifact for this subsequent run to use. So let's just switch to that run, this one, and we'll grab the URL to paste into the task comparison tool. Now when we click Check for Task, NXCloud will analyze that run, pick out the matching task, and give you a breakdown of the changes. In this particular case, anyone who was quick enough to spot it when we looked at the other run will not be surprised that there is a warning at the top of the page telling us that the first run used a read-only access token. So its output wasn't cached, and it could never be the source of a cache hit. Aside from that, we can also see that there are numerous differences between these tasks. Each of the highlighted nodes has a different hash ID, meaning that the contents referenced differ from one task to the next. Now, this tool can save you a lot of time when you're getting cache misses you weren't expecting. And finally, for less of a sneak preview now and more of a recap of the UI that's coming in the next weeks, some of what I've shown you is already out of date, but the functionality is at least broadly similar. Here we can see some organization insights, such as the month-to-date CI pipeline executions, which is important for billing, average CI pipeline execution time, and some other data, including whether this is public or private, number of members, which plan you're currently on. And because the maximum number of workspaces is part of our enterprise licensing agreement, we also show how many you've used out of your total. The workspace dashboard changes considerably, with similar insights at the top of the page, also showing how much computation time you've saved, what your current cache hit rate is over the last 7 or 30 days. By default, now we show not runs, but CI pipeline executions. Each of these gathers together a number of run groups comprising each pipeline. And you can see that each CI pipeline execution also has commit information and the committer responsible, making them far more relatable to your activity in your repo. And if we dig into one of these in-progress CI pipeline executions, we can see exactly what Simon and Victor showed you earlier, which is, we see the detail of the agent steps, we view streaming logs, which is actually a really cool feature. And if we go back, yeah, okay. When we take a look at a completed execution, you can see there's now a link to view some analysis. with notes indicating what you can improve. Now, we're fully expecting to release a new look and feel sometime over the next few weeks, I think. After we've shaken out any issues by dog fooding this in the NX repo. We think it should hugely improve the utility of the NX Cloud UI. And that's it for now. I hope this hasn't been too pedestrian for you. We have so much more that we're going to release over the next coming weeks and months, and I really can't wait for you all to see it. Thank you.